Hey, what's going on, everybody? David Noe with Speakeasy HR, powered by Payroll Partners. We are back at it with a brand new episode, new guest, and cannot wait to get into this fun topic with one of my favorite Buckeyes from the great state of Ohio. Welcome, Christie Engler, to Speakeasy HR. How are you today?
Thanks, Dave. OH.
It's funny that you and I have become, I would say, mutual acquaintances and professionally, even though we both root for different teams in college athletics. But hey, we're all rooting for the Big Ten tonight, I'm sure,
That's
for the
right.
national championship. So
Yep.
best of luck to Indiana as they play Miami. So we are live on LinkedIn and YouTube. It's episode 58. And we are obviously, this is a holiday for a lot of people off work. It's Martin Luther King Day. So really just wanted to point out the leadership and position he had in our past and what he did, just to show the courage, conviction, and care for people, and really why I think a lot of people get into HR to change their workplaces and communities and the world. So as we talk through this topic today with Christy, let's just think about the leadership culture and human side of work, and really what he did in all of his work. So really a great day to celebrate and think about the people that really have impacted you. So just wanted to mention that, and we're grateful you're here. So let's get into it. So um, Speakeasy HR was an idea that I had a few years ago, and now it is reality that I am doing live podcasts. I have a blog, so if you haven't been out to the blog, speakeasyhr.com, I put out a brand new blog about vendor or partner and why HR and payroll pain is peaking right now. So I feel your pain if you are in those kinds of situations. But for those of you who are watching live, we're on LinkedIn and YouTube. So if you have a question throughout, please chime in. Would love to hear from you today. So, Christy, take us back to kind of your thought around getting into this kind of profession, and kind of go back to, when that all started, just to share a little bit about your background so people that don't know you.
Absolutely. So when I was 3, I went around and told everybody I was going to be the president of the United States. That was my end game. I got to be about 5, and I was like, I should probably do something else before you hit age 35 of when the Constitution says you can run. So I came up with this idea that I was going to be a lawyer, that I was going to be an attorney.
Okay.
That actually carried me all the way through high school graduation and to the Ohio State University, and started as a political science major and said, okay, this is what I'm going to do. So interestingly, I was in the Arts and Sciences College then, and they had a minor program that they started when I was like a freshman, sophomore, um, for arts and sciences students in business. And I'm like, okay, cool. I want to run my own, firm someday. So, and I like business stuff, so I'll take these few courses, get this extra minor. That'd be nice. And so I'm a junior at Ohio State, and I'm sitting in a HR 101 class, and it seriously was almost like a lightning bolt kind of moment. It just hit me. To me, that was the Lord tapping on my shoulder, saying, "This is it. This is what you're supposed to be doing."
Yeah.
And honestly, I never looked back. I was sitting in that class, and I was like, "This is so cool. This stuff is really interesting. I feel like I could do this, and I could make an impact, and this would be awesome." So I shifted gears. I ended up finishing my major because I was so far into it, it didn't make sense to change at that point. But instead of law school, I then went and got my master's in HR. So that's where it all started.
That's awesome. And for those of you who have watched, I have a mini air horn that was a find on TikTok. So I definitely love to use this when I remember. And so that, to me, I asked that question, especially for people with HR backgrounds, because most of the people did not just wake up when they're
Yep.
7 years old. Other than one guest, one said they loved to act like they were their mom, and they would fire people, and they would, instead of playing with dolls, they would fire people. she knew she wanted to be in HR. So most people don't until they figure out, okay, I could do this and make an impact. So, uh,
Yeah.
so you've always lived in Ohio then, I guess?
Yes.
Okay,
Yep. Whole life. Yep. Born and raised.
very good. Well, it is January and we're getting some fun up and down weather, and so looking forward to getting out of the winter, and holidays are past us. Everyone's maybe getting a cold or being sick, and so we'll be jumping into the spring here, hopefully really soon. So you wanted to be in HR, and now you're doing some work with your business, New Day HR. So tell us a little bit about New Day.
So I pretty much grew up in HR in the outsourcing space. So I worked for PEO, ASO, and I really loved that because you get to touch everything
Hmm.
and you get to work with every different kind of industry. And when I have an owner who's driving me crazy, I don't have to be with them 24/7. I can, hey, okay, let's put this on pause and we'll talk later.
Yeah.
So that's how I learned HR. And when people ask me what's a good way to get into HR, I tell them to go find an outsourcing company to go work for because you get to touch all the industries, you can touch all the different facets of HR. I
Yeah.
worked with all kinds of cool people who then found their way. They were payroll folks or they ended up going, tech and systems or recruiting or, whatever. And so it's a really great platform for that. So I got to see a whole bunch of stuff.
Yeah.
So then I tried my hand a couple times at being the internal head of HR for one single company. I tried that a couple times. Unfortunately, none of those companies were ready for me, and they brought me in, but they weren't really ready for that.
Yeah.
During that time and kind of throughout 2024, I just kind of kept coming back to, what, I want to be back working with clients, with individual business owners, all different kinds of industries, and kind of doing that on my terms.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I went ahead and registered my business January 1, 2025, and said, okay, throughout the next year, I'm going to kind of get this going.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Um, Plans changed a little bit when I got laid off the first week of March in 2025 from my corporate role. And God said, hey, we're doing this now. And I said, okay, cool, great. So thankfully, because of my tremendous network and friends and everything that I have built over the last 20 years, I had referrals out the door from the get-go and have been able to do that for the last almost year now. So and then on top of that, also doing the speaking gigs and lots of those, and hope to keep those coming. So
Absolutely. Well,
yeah,
another one for that, because not everyone can go out and start their own business and be successful at it. A lot of people fail at that, and
yep,
so congratulations on everything you've done. And like I said, you and I have connected for quite some time and had this on the calendar for quite some time now. And so again, it's always fun to learn more about someone's background and if they started a business or been in HR. So I'm sure you've learned a lot, but
yep,
I'm sure you've also had a lot of advice given to you.
yeah,
So
tons.
a question, you know, there's a question I always ask guests to kind of hear really what's important to them. So in all of the advice you've received, what's the biggest piece of advice you've ever gotten?
So and this actually goes back a few years when I started speaking in 2020. John Thurman gave me an outstanding piece of advice, which was do not go broke trying to be a speaker. A lot of organizations unfortunately don't want to, pay speaker fees or pay, at least reimburse for travel and things like that. Um, Really not the best way to go. I understand budgets and all of that, but organizations that can and should respect speakers' contributions by doing that. And so he said, just make sure that you are careful in the ones that you pick,
Yeah.
and that you don't go broke because there's no reason to do that. And so that was just great advice as I was starting out speaking. So anybody who's interested in speaking should heed John's advice. Because he'd already been there and done that. So
Yeah.
that was really good.
No,
Um,
absolutely.
other folks, as far as, kind of going out on my own and doing my own thing, I mean, several people were kind of like, okay, thank goodness it's about time you do this. You should be doing this.
Yeah.
And honestly, a couple people just said, just get after it. It doesn't have to be perfect every day. You're going to learn stuff all the time, but just do it. Just get out there, do it, start telling people what you want to do, and things have manifested ever since. So it was really about the not hesitating, trust yourself, and just go.
Right.
Yeah.
No, you're going to continue to be successful. And like the board says, champions adjust. So definitely, definitely remember that.
Yep.
Okay. So we are going to transition to the world famous envelope icebreaker game that everyone loves to play. All right. Uh-oh. Background's not there. Jeez. So it's a one-man show, so that's on me. I can't blame anybody. So, Christy, you got 15 envelopes here. Pick a number, and we're going to see what you pick.
Always start with number 3.
Number 3. All right, number 3 it is for Christy. And what is in the envelope? It is, if your resume had a fun fact section, what would it say?
It would say 2-time half marathon runner.
Nice.
9-year Orange Theory member, and getting after it.
Okay.
So yeah, and definitely that has changed my life. Finding Orange Theory, it took me 37 years to find the thing I could stick with from a fitness perspective.
Good for
And
you.
it's been almost 9 years, and it's been tremendous. So yeah,
That's great. Well, good
Yeah.
for you. Keep that up for sure. All right. So before we get into your topic, which I cannot wait, because this is one that, like, I really feel like people are going to learn so much from, and from somebody like you that has seen so much, like you had mentioned before as you were talking about your background, and just the way that people have to really go back to the focus and the human edge in HR and in this capacity in this workforce right now. So just a couple of messages from our presenting sponsor, Payroll Partners, and then we will dive into it here. 1 second.
Finding a new employee takes time and money. For one position on a single job board, you could easily spend a minimum of $5 to $10 a day advertising a job post. It's worth noting that the average time it takes to hire a new employee is 36 days. However, it can take longer than that. You could find yourself paying hundreds of dollars a month for a single job board. And if you're using multiple job boards for multiple positions, this could add up to thousands of dollars a month. There is a much simpler and more affordable way of finding the right candidate. At Payroll Partners, we offer an applicant tracking system to help manage your hiring process. Our ATS is customizable, allowing you to decide which days you want to run the job and when to close it so you don't break the bank. And this feature lets you e-blast your network, posting jobs on multiple boards at once, all managed in one location. Payroll Partners, elevating your payroll and HR experience.
All right. So if you are in a situation fed up with your technology service provider, your vendor, looking for a partner, look us up, payrollpartners.net. Look me up on LinkedIn. Christy's shaking her head because she knows how we work, and she's been a great resource. So think about us as you look at next technology partners to connect with, and be happy to just hear about your situation. I love HR. I love technology, and really figuring out how we can help any business out there. So, Christy, we have a few questions to get into, and looking at your topic and looking at what you're bringing to Speakeasy HR today, I do have someone in the chat. So, get it, Christy, you are a rock star. Thanks for joining. Is it, how do you pronounce the first name?
Zuleika.
There we go. Must be a fan of yours. So
She
thank you.
is. She's a amazing HR professional herself. So
Sweet. Well, she gets me an air horn too. So thanks for joining today. So your topic on the human edge, HR's human edge in 2026. You said if employees aren't your top priority, what are you doing? What does that really look like in 2026?
So the thing that I have seen for over 20 years now, most people go into business for some reason. They're
Mhm.
passionate about something, right? I've dealt with your accountants and your nonprofit folks to people who I actually had a client one time they did powder coating. I never knew what powder coating even was until I walked
Okay.
into this place and into this shop and and the person's dad had started it, 20 some years before. And so a lot of times, especially these multi-generation owned family businesses, they started it for a reason.
Yeah.
And very rarely did they ever start a business to become an employer. They started it to live out a passion, a purpose, an operation. Great. But when you start employing people and become an employer, your role changes and what you have to do changes and the compliance changes. And now you have a whole different set of responsibilities. Unfortunately, I don't think a lot of owners think about that.
Yeah.
And they don't understand that people's livelihoods are sitting on their shoulders. And that's a scary thing. And that's a lot of responsibility, but it's definitely not something that any owner or any employer can shirk away from.
Yeah.
So thinking about that and saying, okay, if I didn't have people at the end of the day, I would not have a business.
Right.
I have yet to find one of these businesses that's 100% working on robots.
Yep.
I just haven't seen it yet.
Yeah.
So until somebody can completely remove the human element from their business, if you kind of have to go back to the basics. If I didn't have these people, I would not have this operation.
Right.
Therefore, your people should be awfully important on your priority list.
Yeah.
Not just in terms of, oh man, I got to pay the salaries and the benefits and the taxes. Yeah, it's a lot of money. It is.
Yep.
But it's going to be. So let's just take it and swallow it and roll with it. But if we don't treat our people well, if we've got a ton of turnover, if we've got a toxic culture, you're not putting your people first when you have these scenarios.
Right.
And the thing is, it doesn't have to be so difficult. If you treat people well, if you have a great workplace, if you do the right things, your applicant pool could be lining the street.
Yep.
People waiting to get inside because they're like, oh my gosh, I heard this place is awesome to work for.
Yep.
And quite frankly, the new generation of the workforce, which I have a daughter who's a freshman in college this year, talking to her friends and my own students, they care about what companies are doing in the world, not just in their operation.
Yeah.
They care about who you are, how do you take care of your people, what are you doing to give back? They're looking for that when they're looking for an employer. It's not just about dollars and cents and what the position is.
Right.
So these are all the things that I think employers have got to think about as we're moving into a new year.
So with your years of experience, what challenges feel new and which are just louder than before that you're seeing?
So it's interesting because I feel like some of the newness is some of the new generation of the workforce and
Mhm.
how these folks simply look at work. Um, I've worked for people and forgive me, but so many folks who are in the baby boomer generation, right? They looked at work a certain way. I like
Yeah.
having conversations with my 89-year-old grandmother about what it was like when she was working. And she'll say, "Oh yeah, we didn't, you didn't bring yourself to work. You weren't a person. You weren't allowed to have any personal stuff going on while you were there." My dad was a CEO and moved up throughout his career up to being a CEO, and he talks about things and how different it was. We're just in a different time, and so we have to look at things differently. But really, what feels new is just how we look at people.
Right.
People are awesome and they're messy. And you can't expect a person to just turn off their life because they walk in the door of your operation. It's just not going to happen.
Yeah.
Quite honestly, what we know is that if we treat people well and if we take care of them as their whole self, they'll actually do better in the work. They will be a more productive person. They will be a happier employee. Get rid of those toxic folks. So a lot of that seems new when you're asking about what's new. Is just kind of how we view people and how we view individuals.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So working with small, large organizations, where do leaders usually get people strategy wrong, and how can they fix it?
A lot of times, honestly, David, it's that they don't think about a people strategy. They think about a marketing strategy, a financial strategy. They don't think about a people strategy. It's, especially for a lot of entrepreneurs, who do they hire? Their family and friends, because that's who you need, right? That's who you trust around you. But a lot of times what I've seen is those businesses outgrow those folks.
Mhm.
A lot of times you'll have a new business. You've got 3 to 5 of your best pals and probably your cousin, working with you. And then a few years go by and maybe those folks are not capable, quite frankly, of moving the business forward. That's really hard for an owner to have that conversation with their family and friends. I've been a part of several of those over the years. I'll never forget the day the one owner called me and said, "Yeah, I got to fire my brother-in-law today." And I'm like, "Okay, yep, we knew it was coming. All right, I'll be there in 10." So things like that about just moving forward and adjusting. But having a people strategy and actually saying, what can I do to attract and retain the best possible talent for this organization? And it's not just about who I know, it's not just about, what's cheap, it's about what's best. And so where a lot of leaders go wrong is that they simply don't put enough strategy into it.
Yeah. I continually see this as a theme, and how middle management plays such an important role, because they're in such a difficult situation, right?
Yep. Yeah.
And it's kind of like a leader, an owner can say and try to make their culture the way they want it, but it's the people that like get managed by these managers that, are they the right manager? Do they have the skill set to be a manager?
Yep.
And so I guess in situations like that, let's say a company identifies that yes, their middle management is not the strongest in 2026. What are some of the steps they can really kind of take to get that group to that next level?
So the first thing they need to do is call me and inquire about my manager training program,
Yep.
which I organically built over the last 20 years because I've seen exactly what you're saying. Managers get promoted because they're great at what they do, right? They're the best person on the line. They're the best mechanic. They're the best whatever.
Yeah.
And they say, "Great, you're promoted. Here's these 5 people you're in charge of. Have fun." And that's usually the end of the conversation. And they don't talk to them about legal liability, and they don't talk to them about being the front line of culture. Managers know stuff that the other people above them, and certainly people in HR will never know.
Yeah.
100%. They are privy to everything, especially they get on these group chat messages. And, I had a situation where I had groups of people who were friends and family working together. They all carpooled. You wanted to talk about the great conversations that took place in those cars on the way to work. And sometimes the managers were in there.
Yeah.
We're in some of those cars. And it's like, things way before any of us are going to. And so how do we use that as a strategic advantage? But how do we also support our middle managers? Because I'll tell you, David, so many managers I've had managers come to me and breaking down because they are so stressed out. They are not supported. They don't have the resources, and they just don't feel like they are successful and that they know how to be successful. HR has such an opportunity in all of that to help. Give your managers a hug. And yes, you can give them a real hug, but also give them what they need. Give them resources, give them tools, not just throw them a book here and there, but people learn differently. Hey, what podcast could I listen to help me be a better manager? What YouTube videos? There's so many different types of mediums. And check in with them and just say, "Hey, this situation you're going through really sucks. How can I help you, through this?" They need that support. And so what I tell my peers all the time as I'm doing my manager training sessions is, if you have any beef with your managers, you need to bury it And you guys need to be a team. You need to be on the same page, because what you don't want your employees doing is answer shopping between their managers, and then they go to HR. And you want to talk about a culture tanker right there. So what I do is I work with teams a lot of the time. A lot of times it's just fun things. I had a group one time, they already had a bowling league. So we did our initial manager training stuff, and then they decided, you know what, we're going to take 15 minutes out of our league and we're going to talk about a topic. And I was like, okay. They came up with this themselves. And then the next day they would call me, and they were so funny. They were all on speakerphone in somebody's office, and they were like, Christy, so and so bowled 250, and guess what we talked about? And it was just really fun. Like they found a way to have fun with it. So usually we kind of do like an initial session, and then usually every quarter they want to talk about something else. Dig deep into performance management, dig deep into employment law, because there's a lot of liability there. There's a lot of things that they need to at least have enough knowledge to be aware of. They can't just say, I didn't know. That's not going to work.
Yeah. And anybody listening that is with an organization, maybe they're not in an HR role, but maybe HR is part of their internal, infrastructure. This is really good for them to hear, because they need to see and value what HR does, right? And what AI is not going to do for them. And what I don't want to see companies adding meetings to their schedules just to have meetings. I hear about that. Like, why are we having meetings? We could do this in an email. We could do this so I stress and say, have the right meetings, the one-on-one meetings with your team. Check in with them, like you said. Have HR check in with the managers and give them a hug, like you said. Give them a hug. It's okay.
Yep.
If they're okay with it. But yes, everybody needs that. HR needs that, right? HR is burnt out.
Yeah.
So everybody's to
100%.
some degree burned out. It's a matter of what kind of culture the company that you work for has to help and really improve your situation when you feel burned out. So,
right. I've also told managers, and I tell my peers, if somebody's not good at managing people, that's okay. They can also say, you know what, this is not for me. Let's figure that out, because having them stuck in that role, they will leave sooner rather than later. So, they might be the best on the team. That's great. Let's keep them as the best on the team. If managing is not comfortable, then they don't need to do it.
Yeah. Not everyone is built to be a manager. Or be a leader. There's a difference. And leaders and managers are not the same. So especially with the younger generation, like you had said, they want to feel included, and they're hungry to learn. They're hungry to have a contributing factor to the organization, and feel like they're going to be motivated and engaged in that job. Everyone wants to be motivated to do a good job in their role. But I also do not like it when I hear people in a management role be like, leave your attitude at the door, walk in, act like you're going to work, and it's so hard to do that. Nobody really is good at that anymore,
No. You say, what year is it?
Yeah. It's so bad. So you mentor future HR leaders, and so what skills or mindset do they absolutely need to succeed in that profession?
So the phrase that I use a lot is HR is an experience game. So you can read all the books, you can get all the certifications, you can get all the degrees, you can do all of that stuff, and all of that stuff is great, and it plays a role. But none of that taught me what to do the first time I encountered an employee who came to work drunk, or a domestic violence situation that started in the morning in somebody's home, and then spouse followed spouse to the work site, and it continued in the office, and everybody got to be a part of it. You don't learn that kind of stuff through those learning mediums. Those are hands-on. HR is an experience game. So folks who are starting out need to be prepared that at least for the first 5 years, you're going to be doing some grunt work, and you're going to be doing some lower level stuff. And that is okay. That is good for your development, and it's good for everything. you are not ready until you are at least 10 years in to be advising anybody on what to do, especially with risk management types of situations. Until you've seen it and you've been in it, because that's the thing. A lot of the advice and counsel that we give
Mhm.
can be dangerous to organizations. We're talking about people's lives, we're talking about people's livelihoods. There's real stuff that happens, and so you need to be patient, and sometimes it's really hard, and I know I was one of those very impatient 25-year-olds. Had a good leader who had to have the Christie, you need to calm down conversation with me. And I've had it since with folks because I get it. You're eager. You want to, you read some things and you think you know it. You don't. Okay. So HR is an experience game. You need to just let it happen, and get as much great experience as you possibly can. So that is what I tell people who are looking to get into the industry and get into outsourcing if you at all can. It's
Yep.
a great way to get
Yep.
started.
I will definitely agree to that. I was in a PEO for a while, and it really, it's kind of like when people talk up, about how old their dog is, like, oh, my dog is
Yeah.
in dog years, it's, whatever. So like every year in a PEO, I feel like you get 7 years of HR experience.
Yeah.
So
100%.
it's
Absolutely.
it's very
Yeah.
eye-opening, and I feel like people can just write a whole book on their experiences in the things that you have to deal with, and you're like, "Oh, I haven't heard of that one before, but this is new." And
Yeah.
so again,
Yep.
like you said, you're dealing with people, you're dealing with their families. Sometimes you're having to fire their family members sometimes. So there's
Mhm.
so much dynamics that go into it. And, again, HR plays such an important role in that. And now with just the mental health state that we have within everybody working, everybody's dealing with stuff. Everybody has stuff. You might hear about it, you
Yep.
might not. People might not open up like that. So when someone's having a bad day and then you give them a survey to take, how do you like your job? On a scale from 1 to 10, 1, 1, like, so again, you're gonna get people's
Uh-huh.
different versions of themselves on a day by day basis,
Right.
and you can't expect the owner or the manager to play that role of HR sometimes. So, uh,
Right.
people call you a transformational leader. So what habits help you build trust and momentum with teams?
So one of the things that has always been important to me as I've been in leadership roles is just meeting people
Yeah.
where they are. So, for instance, really simple thing like having one-on-ones. So at one point I had a team and I had two people who were remote, and one person said, "You know what? I want to meet like once a month and we can talk about whatever and don't really need a lot of structure." Um, and I had a lot of insight into everybody's work. So if something was happening or not not happening, I would know. I had plenty of insight. I didn't have to have that meeting just
Yeah.
to know if he was working or not. Um, so I said, okay, great. That works for you. That works for me. Let's do that. At the same time, I had another person who said, I would like a weekly one-on-one with an agenda and, just needed that structure and needed that time with me. Okay, great. We'll do that. Doesn't have to be the same. Meet people where they are. Get them what they need when you're the leader. It's
Yeah.
about them, not about you. So that's one of the things that has done me well is just to listen to people. How do you best communicate? I can't stand text messages, especially when they're business. Like text is reserved for my, pretty much my family and friends. I don't want to get, and I just from a liability standpoint, I don't want to have to dig through text messages then when the lawyer starts asking for stuff. So that's one of the ways if somebody said, hey, what's the best way to communicate with you? It's not via text message. you know and so I ask people all the time, how do you feel about phone call versus email versus text versus so just
Yeah.
meeting people where they are
Yeah.
and respecting that.
Yeah. I've heard about personalizing the experience for an employee,
Mhm.
especially new hires, and trying to personalize it as much as you can. And I think
Yeah.
as you hire people from various generations and you can personalize it while still keeping the core values and within the organization you
Right.
work for, but personalize it, make it fun, make it interactive and engaging for the new hires.
Yeah.
So when it comes to recognition, and everybody likes to hear they're doing a good job, and I try to remind people in manager roles, call out the good as much as you can too, not
Mhm.
just the bad. So are there any situations that come to mind where you really felt like you played a part in the way an organization started recognizing their team differently, and what did that look like?
Yeah, so I had a client many years ago, and then they did exactly that. They did managers were giving out a lot of praise, and they were doing a good job with it. And because they were so good at it, and it was a part of their culture, and their folks were very receptive to it, I said, "What about peer to peer?" Because sometimes it means even more when it's coming
Mm,
from the person next to you or the person directly on your team. And it is easy, quite frankly, when you are a manager. Your rock star employees will
yeah,
always get more attention. I mean, they just do. And sometimes you have a silent, very high
yeah,
performing contributor, though. And they're just not a person that puts a lot of attention on themselves or whatnot. They're always the ones with the high assists as opposed to all
yeah.
the points in the game, right? And so you'll always have that. And so I think peer to peer recognition is one of the best things. And so they started doing that in that particular company, and it was a huge success. So much so that they had to kind of tone it down a little bit. It's like, people's cubes cannot constantly be covered with all these pieces of paper. Um, but they did great, and they turned it into something that became a really nice program, and
Yeah.
really meant a lot to
And it doesn't
people.
cost a lot of money to say thank
So
you, right?
no, that's a great one
Yeah.
for cheap. Yeah.
I and you just explained something that we kinda do peer to peer, and we have an employee of the month, and people get to nominate each other when they see someone go above and
Yep.
beyond or help them out on a client, help them
Yep.
out on a project, and we all don't see that every day. The employees see
Yep.
it, the managers may not. So I love when people will spend a few minutes and nominate somebody on their team or another department, and
Yep.
and same with, as I was saying, with personalization, some people don't want to be recognized. They don't want their picture taken.
Right.
They don't want
Right.
to be in the
Mhm.
newsletters. They don't want to be
Yep.
on social media. So like you really have to think that
Yep.
everybody's going to have a different opinion about how they want to be recognized and how they want to be congratulated. So the more you
Right.
can understand that and understand your team, it's gonna mean even more when you
Yep.
follow what they are just asking.
Absolutely.
So we talked about burnout. It's real, and
Yep.
so what's one shift that leaders can make today to try to create a healthier workplace?
So I think that a lot of companies get stuck in
Mhm.
we've always done it this way. And so you take a lot of positions, and it's been staffed the same way maybe for 10,
Yeah,
15 plus years. I think going back to a good old fashioned job analysis and saying, okay, there's new technology in play, there's new processes in play. Quite frankly, you just might have a person or a pool of candidates who simply are different. They work differently. Maybe they're a little bit more efficient. Maybe they're able to get more done. Maybe they understand the systems better. Who knows what it is? But going back to looking at the job itself, what do we value this job at? And are we really doing it in the best way? Or is it time to re-engineer this a little bit and look at it differently? I think that would do a lot to help burnout, especially if you involve the employees and ask them who are doing the jobs, hey, how could we do this better? Um, Not enough companies do that. They don't include their employees in these conversations. That's who's going to tell you
right.
how it's going to get better. If you don't ask them, they're going to leave. I promise you, or they're just going to sit back and keep
Yep.
doing the same thing they've been doing, right? Because their engagement is so low. So that's a great way to get really accurate information and just kind of think about re-engineering a little bit. Do we always
Yeah.
have to do this
Yeah.
the same way?
Exactly.
That's one of the things that I think the pandemic taught us, is that we can do things differently. And one of the things that I loved, what
Yeah.
came out of that as a result.
And we still hear about people working remote, in the office, hybrid, what the flexible schedule looks like and everything. And,
Yeah.
as part of my role working on staffing our team and recruiting, I always ask, what kind of environment are you looking for? And most people are open to working in the office, or they're like, hey, I miss being in the office. I miss that human connection.
Yeah.
So not everybody wants to work remote anymore. If they liked it
Right.
before, or companies are having to go back. And so again, I think it is very challenging to manage people, and this is just from my perspective, like, to manage people virtually versus to manage people in person. It's different.
It is.
Um, so you definitely have to have
It is.
a different strategy to that, especially if you've been fully remote
Yeah.
your entire
Right.
existence as a company, right? So
Right.
So as
Yeah.
AI automation is shifting and changing all the time, especially with recruiting and onboarding and HR functions, where does HR's human edge still matter the most that you see?
It's so funny because I actually had a student this fall in my OSU class who asked if I ever, and he wasn't being facetious. He was genuinely asking. He said, "Do you think AI will ever replace HR?" And I said, "Joe, when AI can hand a person a tissue and give them a hug and call their spouse,
Yeah.
then we'll talk." Right? Um, I just feel like, and I think I've told you that I'm a little bit of an AI denier in this space, because the only thing I'm hearing people say from an HR perspective is things like, "Oh yeah, it's really great for writing job descriptions." Okay, if you're an HR professional worth your salt and you can't write a job description or know to go to ONET and get them, we have a bigger problem. So it's, again, kind of going back to the basics, like I was talking about before. HR's got to know the basics, regardless of what the systems are doing. A few years ago, Amazon had a big issue with some payroll things and some leave administration things, and their head of HR blamed it on the technology. And I said, okay, that's great and all, but I know payroll professionals and leave administrative professionals who can do all this stuff with a piece of paper and a pencil, and they should be able to. That's the basics. That's getting back to the core of
Right.
your craft, knowing your craft. So AI may be great, and the automation, and I certainly love a lot of the systems and what they do, particularly through payroll partners. But it will never take the place of
Yeah.
the people, and HR being able to think on its feet, think about the fact that this law has to do with this law, then, and you've
Yep.
got to make this transition, and basically just being there to take care of people. It's never going to do that, in my opinion. Um, and so I'm all for the technology, but when you start to
Mm.
get lazy with it, and you start to practice lazy HR, I have serious issues with that. So you still have to be
Yeah.
able to know your stuff.
I don't know if you ever
Yeah.
talk about this in your school with students, but over the last couple of years, I've really looked at myself, my personal brand, and what I bring to the table in my role, and what my responsibilities are. And I go back to this simple sentence that I think really just summarizes what HR can do, and what I've seen and what you've seen, obviously. So impacting others through meaningful experiences that inspire growth and connection. So to me, it's how can I play a role in other people in their experiences working for our organization with growth, connection, and it's hard to put a number on that, because someone's like out there
Right.
probably thinking like, well, HR doesn't really bring us money. They don't generate revenue. Well,
Right.
I would disagree. Because if you don't hire that person, then who's doing the work,
Yep.
or how much from a workforce standpoint. So, HR plays such an important role, and you impact other people. You can
Yep.
you can play a mentor, inspiring them to do better work in their jobs and find the right seat for them, right? Like they
Right.
they might be coming into your company, and after 3 or 4 years or whenever, they might be open to other opportunities in the organization. And not everybody can say, "Oh, we can promote from within all the time," and it's hard to do that, right? So,
Right.
it's I look at this time in our workforce, and it's so exciting for a lot of reasons. It's also scary for a lot of reasons for people. And
Yep.
I've talked to a lot of people
Yep.
that have been laid off in the last 6 to 12 months, especially in technology and what we do, because companies get acquired, and that's part of their path. But I think as people have a
Yep.
personal brand statement that they can really get behind and follow on a daily basis, it's going to really help them in their career. So
Right.
Christy, looking ahead in 2026, what excites you about HR and what worries you?
Um, I think what's cool and what's exciting is the new generation
Yeah,
of workers and the workforce, and just kind of
yeah,
seeing what they bring to the table, um, and getting companies ready for that. Um, I think it's exciting that the baby boomers are exiting. I think there's opportunity in that. I think, the companies are going to have to do a lot to get ready for all of that, and I hope that they are, because you got to get that knowledge out of those people. You got to start using them for training and for development, and you got to start getting all that experience out. So companies that are not doing that are going to be behind. They're going to have serious issues. But it's an exciting time that we can utilize these folks in that way, as they can help bring in the next generation, and then the next generation can take that previous knowledge and experience, couple it with what they know, and really into the technology. I think it's exciting. I think it's exciting. At the same time, it's scary, because we do have a tremendous amount of experience and knowledge going right out the door. As people are exiting the workforce, you do have a lot of small business owners who are looking to either sell or be acquired or
yep,
whatever. And so that's going to bring them back, that's going to bring a lot of change. Um, but I think for HR, I think our opportunity is always there. You just have
yeah,
to see it and find it. But we always have an opportunity, because
yep,
there will always be people. So until the people leave the
yeah.
earth, I think we're good.
Nope, I
Yeah.
agree with everything you said. So a couple of things before we wrap up. There's a few events coming up. Disrupt HR. Christy knows about Disrupt HR, and I'm fortunate to be on the planning team with Cincinnati's Disrupt HR. So February 19th, if you're in the area of Cincinnati, the Midwest, looking for a Disrupt HR event to come to, this is where it all started, was Cincinnati. So take a look at Disrupt HR, scan the QR code. There's chapters all over the country, all over the globe of Disrupt HR. And the HR cruise that Christy will be a part of is in March. It's in almost 2 months, looks like March 16th through the 21st. So tell us a little bit about that, Christy.
So the HR cruise has actually been going on for many, many years, and just really, I think, has kind of gained more attention, more traction over the last handful of years. Um, Aspect Marketing out of the Cleveland, Ohio area is the presenter, provider, and they do all the work basically to put it all together. I think they're doing 4 different sailings this year in 2026, including one to Alaska in May, I think. So yeah, that'll be very, very cool. It's just a really great experience. I didn't know that cruise ships had conference rooms until I
Yeah.
went on this one. You get, about 100 peers, and so very, small, intimate. We were able to make some great connections. Just really getting into topics and really having great conversation, great development, and great learning happened on that ship. And then fun, right? You're on a cruise, so you're getting to have the fun as well with these folks, which is amazing. my first cruise, there were people
Hmm.
from literally all over the world in HR on the cruise. It was fantastic. So being able to get kind of mix fun and play and learning was great, and so I highly recommend it. It's honestly it's fairly affordable for
Yeah.
putting all those things together. So highly recommend checking it out. Lots of credits available,
Yeah.
and just it was a
Yeah.
great time. So
It
looking forward
sounds
to it.
pretty
Yeah,
nice when it's 25 degrees out right now, and
yeah,
40-mile-an-hour
right.
winds that we all are experiencing in the Midwest. So yeah, so take a look at the
Yeah,
HR
yeah,
cruise. I would love to attend one at some point in the future. So
you
maybe
should.
that'll be something I'll try to get to, but um, definitely check that out if that interests you. So, Christy, I really appreciate your time. I really value what you do. I feel like
Thank you.
there's a lot of people out there that try to be consultants for HR, and sometimes it just doesn't fit what the businesses need. But certainly keep in touch. I wish you all the best this year as you go into other events and things that you do. So um, hopefully we'll connect at some point and keep in touch. But again, thank you for your time and insights into all this. I always learn. It always helps me see just other perspectives of HR and folks like yourself that has obviously been in it for quite some time, and but there's a lot to be done still in the workforce, and HR has a big role in that, and technology isn't going to make it just so much easier in the future. So, well,
Thanks for having me. I
absolutely. We
appreciate
are
you.
going to be back at it next week. We have plenty of new guests coming up over the next few months. Up until the end of this year, I've got people booked out. So, Christy is just one of many amazing new guests coming on to share their perspective. So, take a look on LinkedIn, check out all the new episodes coming out and the newsletter and everything that I'm trying to do with this podcast and content. So, appreciate everyone's time today. And, hopefully we'll see everybody back on Monday next week for the next episode. Take care. See you later.